obstructive cardiomyopathy. In this image, what you can see, this mitral valves after closing moves towards interventricular septum. Mainly this anterior mitral leaflet, you can see this anterior mitral leaflet is moving towards interventricular septum during the systoles, obstructing the flow towards aorta. That is why we call it hypertrophic obstructive. Obstructive means this anterior mitral leaflet is obstructing the flow of aortic blood that aorta is going to receive, that is obstructed in subaortic zone during the systolic period. So that is why we call it systolic anterior motion of anterior mitral leaflet. In this image, you can see the cursor is going through subaortic zone and significant flow obstruction. Peak velocity is between 3 and 4 meter per second, indicating significant subaortic flow obstruction. That is dynamic. A dynamic mode means it changes with different maneuver, like if you are doing exercise, if you are taking more water, if you are having dehydration, this gradient will differ from one another. So it is called dynamic. It is changing one. So this is dynamic subaortic flow obstruction. That is the point to know. Again, this is parasternal long axis view. You can see when the valve mitral closes and then moves towards interventricular septum. This anterior mitral leaflet after closing and moves towards interventricular. You see this. So this is called SAM, or systolic anterior motion of anterior mitral leaflet. This closed mitral valve, if you just move little bit, you see how it happens. See, this portion has moved towards interventricular septum. Again, so move almost here. So very minimum space remains in subaortic zone to pass through, and that is causing subaortic dynamic flow obstruction in case of HOCM. So this is the case of HOCM, and there is SAM and significant subaortic flow obstruction. You can see the size of interventricular septum. This is interventricular septum is much more compared to posterior wall thickness. Criteria wise, it has to be more than 1.5 times. But in this case, it is almost more than 2 or 3 times. You can see the left ventricle is contracting so much, almost no space remains during the systole. Same thing, parasternal long axis view and same systolic anterior motion of anterior mitral leaflet. The probe is placed a parasternal region, so it is most anterior one, and this is most posterior one. This is posterior wall, this is interventricular septum, this is right ventricle, and this is left ventricle. So after the closure of mitral valve, it moves towards interventricular septum, that is moves towards anterior one, anterior structure. That is why we call it systolic anterior motion of anterior mitral leaflet. During this, when the valve moves towards IVS, interventricular septum, anteriorly, then MR happens, that is eccentric one. So in this case, you will see this, the flow obstruction in subaortic zone. At the same time, systolic mitral registration also seen. Again, 4 chamber view, you can see how the valve moves towards intermittent septum. See how this is, the mitral valve is touching each other and closing. Now it will move towards intermittent septum. See movement. This is intermittent leaf has moved towards intermittent septum. You see the thickness of intermittent septum in this zone, basal zone, very thin intermittent septum, and here the very thick intermittent septum. So eccentric. At the same time, subaortic full obstruction and mitral regurgitation.